it's Jessica here with the pugs, Dixie, Izzy, and Keisha. And for today's video, I wanted to talk about the cost of infertility. I am in St. Louis, Missouri, so I know costs are different everywhere around the world in different parts of the U.S., usually adjusted for inflation and cost of living. But anyways, like I said, it is expensive, and I just wanted to talk about how much it's cost. The reason that I wanted to make this video is I know a couple of other vloggers on YouTube have addressed it, but I could never find any information on how much it actually cost when I was trying to find out whether or not I actually wanted to go to a specialist. So I apologize in advance if I looked at some papers, because I'm going to actually go through my receipts and my paperwork for it. But to start out, the initial consultation visit with the doctor was $100. I have a whole separate video about how that visit went and what to expect in that visit, so feel free to check that out as well. But the initial visit is $100, and during that visit they go through and break down a lot more of the financials and what they think you need for that in order to progress through treatment. So when I sat down with the financial coordinator, she was able to explain a little bit more about what I should expect in total cost, and then breaking down different package types. Some of you may or may not know, but Missouri is not a mandated state for fertility coverage, so my insurance nor my husband's covers any of this. So some of the basic testing, which will not have an infertility diagnosis, will be covered. So some of my blood work and my ultrasounds, but once we get to the diagnosis of infertility, I will be on my own for paying for it all out of pocket. So it gets rather expensive rather quickly. So to start for the testing, I had to have a ton of blood work done, which I also talked about in that first video. Apparently Dixie wants to really be in my video today. I had to have a ton of blood work done in that first video that equated to 24 vials of blood. They had me sign a waiver when I went in that if my insurance didn't cover it, that I would pay for it and make them I had to give them a credit card to put on file. If my insurance doesn't cover that, the blood work for that was $950, which is a lot for blood work, but I'm hoping, like the nurse coordinator said in the office, that since it is not diagnosed as infertility, that it'll be covered by my insurance. My husband's chromosome analysis, which is just one vial of blood, will be $21 if insurance doesn't cover it. So hopefully they will cover that for him as well, just like they will for me. After that, I had to do the fluid ultrasound, which is just a saline sonogram where they inject saline into the uterus to make sure everything looks fine. And that was a $250 deductible. They expect my insurance to pay for the rest. And then my husband had to have a semen analysis, which is $20 after insurance. So we're still assuming insurance is going to pick up a lot of the bill for that. So I really can't speak to the total cost of that yet if my insurance doesn't cover it, because I'm not quite sure. So what I wanted to talk about though is like the actual cost of treatment and where you go from there if they do decide to do like an IUI or in vitro. So let me pull up here. The IUI is typically $1,500 for the doctor that I go to. She did say that she would do it for $1,000 plus the medications, and medications are about $500, so $1,500 per cycle for IUI. In vitro though, so IVF is where it gets super expensive really, really quickly. So for a single cell embryo banking package, which includes your office visits, ultrasound exams, egg retrieval, including the procedure rooms and surgical supplies, culture and fertilization, including ICSI, which I know a lot of IVF does not include, so this one does. Cryopreservation of embryos and storage of embryos for up to four months, so including freezing and storage for 4 months, is $10,250. Now, there may be additional services for each retrieval and possible embryo transfers, including things like anesthesia, supply fee, which is $330, anesthesia fee, which is $250, and then biopsy of embryos for PGD or CGH testing. So any of the chromosome testing, which they recommend for us, is $1,625. So in addition to the $10,250, we have another $1,625, $250, $330, and then because of the fact that they recommend the chromosome testing on the embryos, it requires a frozen transfer, which is an additional $32.75 on top of it. So roughly, we're looking at about $17,000 per cycle for IVF if we were to go that route. But that doesn't include the medications. So if you factor in medications, it's about $3,000 to an additional $8,000 in medications. So it can get to be about $20,000 to $25,000 per cycle if you do the frozen embryos with the testing. So that really has me questioning whether or not we would even go that route, just because of the fact of how expensive it is. If you go and look into different package options, there's a 2-cycle embryo package where you can do all of that again for $18,450, and then for the frozen embryos, $32.50 on top of that, and then again the $330 for the anesthesia supply and the $250 for anesthesia, and then $1625 for the testing. So for 2 cycles, you're looking at roughly $35,000 by the time you factor in all the medications needed for both cycles, plus all of the additional treatments that are needed. So we have not really decided where we will go from here. We are hoping, today is Sunday, that tomorrow all my blood work will be back in and we will know a little bit more about what we need to do going forward. But as of right now, it looks like we're hoping to be able to do either an IUI or a natural pregnancy just on its own, and then dealing with my elevated natural killer cells to be able to let the baby implant. So we will hopefully not have to go through IVF, but if we do, we're going to need a miracle, because we do not have anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 lying around or available in debt. So we will be keeping our fingers crossed that we can do this without all of that. For those of you that have gone through IVF and have had to pay for all of that, please feel free to share your story in the comments so that I can learn more from you and how you have done and paid for the total cost of your IVF packages. If you guys would like for me to continue to make videos on my journey as we go forward, please click the subscribe button and give me a thumbs up so that I can know that you guys are watching. Thanks again for following and for keeping up with our journey, and I'll continue to share more.